The GOP has now finished their third debate. It was, for this campaign, the best of the GOP best, fighting to place second through sixth in the primary. Fighting, I guess, for a cabinet position. But you had Ron DeSantis there, you had Ramaswamy, you had Nikki Haley, and a few others. Not as many as in prior debates. They're already starting to drop off. We'll see who makes the cut for the next one. But it seemed to me, and obviously Brett Erlich, Jayar Jackson, I want to know what you guys think, that this was pretty much what I would have expected, despite the fact that I've been out of the news cycle for 3 months. It's still basically a competition for them to try to compete with each other, to promise that they're going to rack up the biggest body count, regardless of topic. If it's about foreign policy, if it's about drugs in America, if it's about immigration, it's promises to shoot people dead. That's effectively what it's all about. We saw a lot of that, a lot of tough talk, a lot of vague talk, a lot of evasions of questions, some hostility towards the moderators specifically. And at some point, we're definitely gonna have to talk about the moderators. It's easy to forget that they were there, but technically they were. So I overall thought that Ramaswamy was able to dominate. It felt to me like the most minutes of the conversation. Ron DeSantis tried to look tough, but it's not in his wheelhouse. I don't think that he sold it particularly well, though he did get a little bit of applause. And the rest, including Tim Scott, were able to break through on a couple of issues, but I didn't see anything massive there that's likely to upset the balance of the primary, particularly because there wasn't a lot of it that really had much to do with Trump, let alone directly challenging Trump. There were a couple of comments about the wall, a little bit about debt. It's good that they're acknowledging Trump's failures in those areas, but they weren't really doing much more than in past debates to talk about the guy that is still dominating the polls. So why don't we go to you, Jayar? What did you think about this debate? I know you guys have been following this a little bit more closely than I over the last 3 months.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think as you're talking about, they're all vying for positions 2 through 6, whoever's left. And the thing is, what they've noticed is, Donald Trump is leading. He's the vicious one. He's the one who talks about the things that he'll do to other people. He started his whole damn campaign back in 2015 talking about what he's going to do to someone, certain groups of people specifically. So they're like, we've tried the attacking a bit. Chris Christie's been the most consistent. We tried the attacking a bit of Donald Trump. Hasn't really made the dent that we thought. So let's go for the viciousness on times 10 now. So that's why we didn't get many discussions about reality-based things that most Americans probably care about. So when they touched on some of those things, which is, 3/4 into the debate, about a few of them talked about the issues that people have with economically in their own households and things that they're struggling with, food on the table, the normal things, right? But as they addressed those things, or they brought those topics up, there was no answers. There was no solutions. There was vague things about how they'd envision it in this utopian society that they've created, even though they said everyone in it is devastated. We're killing folks. People are coming for us. So there's a utopia, and there's also this horrific scene that we've got all at the same time. It's just a lot of emotional words that gets people to then feel a certain way, be afraid, mad, anything, to the point where maybe they'll start leaning in their direction, because I guess that's what Donald Trump is good at. Problem, Donald Trump does it naturally. He is one of those people who basks in hatred and anger and violence and opposition and constant fighting. These other folks have to plan out their things. Tim Scott, we'll talk specifically since you're talking about folks. Tim Scott, I say it every time, I'm fascinated by how boring but then interesting Tim Scott is. Every time he speaks, he's reciting the stuff that they practice. You can tell he's basically looking up at the top of his head, trying to find the words that he was trying to remember. So their whole time they're trying to come up with this particular characterization to put upon themselves and put out there to maybe win something. And now it's just straight up vitriol. That's what I saw as a lot of it. As we go through the details, we'll see how they try to navigate their way through some of that stuff. But there was viciousness, and there was a lot of condoning, let's just call it what it was, murder.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, we can get into the specifics of foreign policy, but for me, it was very clear that the nonsense that you have to speak as a Republican, the weird non-logic of having a platform that is both for this America first non-interventionism and let's dominate the world by building all the tanks, by putting millions of submarines in the South China Sea. The only person who can execute that speech and walk that line is Donald Trump, and he wasn't there. So the whole debate just felt awkward because that is the Republican Party's platform. It's just awkward. Trump is able to make it entertaining enough and ridiculous enough and nail the one-liners enough and big dong everybody on the stage enough for everyone to kind of lose focus on the fact that all of their platform is insanely counterproductive to whatever it for the first issue pertains, purports to support, and then completely turns its back on in a few minutes. And we'll have a bunch of examples of that. I think the winner in my book is Nikki Haley, head and shoulders above everybody else on that stage. I think Ron DeSantis had like some horrible, weird, grimacy things. Nikki Haley was able to put her 5-inch heels on the throat of Vivek Ramaswamy, who is over. Vivek Ramaswamy, who essentially said he'd rather work on Ronna McDaniel's job than he would for the American people as president of the United States. He doesn't want the job. He never did. It was never a serious consideration for it. This is just marketing for himself to now do the job, or at least put the pressure on the people that he feels is safe to put the pressure on, which is the Republican Party leadership, and to try to make a name for himself there. And then the rest of it was very accurately very effectively a lot of foreign policy like Nikki Haley's like, I did all the deals with all these countries already. I know how big our Navy is. And no one else really had a command of that. I don't like Nikki Haley at all. I think she sucks, but she did, in my opinion, win the debate tonight, hands down.
Really quick, John and Brett. I said I agreed with you on that with Nikki Haley, and that's because as far as looking like a candidate who has a grasp on enough of the issues, because that's something I've always said as well. Why is it we expect a president or a presidential candidate at this point to literally know how to do everything, or also literally can do those things? There's a reason why there's positions within our government and why some parts do one thing and then the president does another. But still, as it goes, she seemed the most have the most grasp on how everything works to the degree that presidents control, and also beyond that as well too. So that part I think is what she won on. The problem Nikki Haley's got is that she's running as a Republican right now in 2023, who want nothing to do, voters in general want nothing to do with normalcy, showing that you're illustrating you have a grasp on the topics, talking about your experience in it and why it actually would be beneficial for her to then be doing that stuff again. She said all that stuff. I know the applause lines were getting limited by Lester Holt at the beginning, but they wouldn't have been applauding any of those things from that point. Number one, because they probably wouldn't have understood what she was saying. And number two, they're like, well, that sounds like it's responsible. But no, they want nothing to do with any of that stuff. They want anger and violence. She didn't give it in those moments. Therefore, she didn't get those props.
Yeah, her assertions that she's going to go around the country and around the world killing people were a little bit more vague than some of the other candidates. We're gonna return to the topic of where the moderators popped up, where they didn't seem to care what was happening, and where they did across multiple different areas. But you guys are talking about Nikki Haley and about the talks about the Navy and stuff. So I want to focus on that because Hugh Hewitt's in this debate. I don't know why he's so frequently a moderator in debates. I don't think that like a progressive or liberal equivalent to a Hugh Hewitt who happens to host a radio show would ever be brought on. But he had a moment way back in 2016 where he asked for specifics, like he did in this debate, about the nuclear triad. And he made Donald Trump look like a complete fool because he had no idea what he was talking about. And it felt to me like he was looking to do the same thing by like demonstrating his own expertise by being hyper specific. I want you to tell me how many ships we'll have in 2 years and which type of ships. And I thought, look, I would love for our president to have a firm grasp of the issues, but who care? Who expects all of them to be able to say we're gonna have 332 or 338 ships, and this is how many like littoral ships we're gonna have, and this is how many minesweepers. Like it seemed to me like it was so disconnected from what people would want to know, even if we're gonna get in depth about national security or something like that. It just seemed like such a waste of time to put so much of the moderators' interest and passion into something that I'm sure flew over the head and outside of the interest of so many people viewing this.
Well, as a person who has to interview people to like get a job, there are types of questions that you do, right? You ask just to see if they have like a specific knowledge of something. And Nikki Haley did. She's like, we have 328 ships. Like she knew whatever the number was. And there are other people. So there's people in the job interview who do know that stuff. And this is a job interview. Those moderators are interviewing them. And I think people observing the job interview, like the HR person who does the initial screening, they just want to see that you have some kind of grasp. And I think that's the position that a lot of viewers are in. They're like, I don't know how many ships we are in, but she seems to. And she seems like someone I have confidence in to know the inner workings of our military. Now, the other type of person in that interview is something that Donald Trump would do. And I think the viewer would probably respond to what I think we all in our gut would know be a Donald Trump answer, which is more ships, faster ships, stronger ships, bigger ships than their ships. And our bigger ships are going to be faster and stronger ships than their biggest, strongest, fastest ships. I think that's how it goes. And I think that's what the viewers are looking for, or would be looking for, if they hadn't already made up their mind like they have in this Republican primary.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like on a gut level, I don't know exactly how Republicans will process what they heard, the claims, whether a little bit vague. Ramaswamy was like, we're going to have 20% more or something. But I believe that Ron DeSantis said we're going to have 600. And I'm not an expert when it comes to this. I don't know exactly how many ships and what types of ships we should have. But it feels to me that if we have about 300, 600 seems like too many. That seems like way, way too many, considering we already bear in a military. Not an expert, that's just what I feel. Anyway, any other general comments, general reactions before we jump into some of the specifics?
The overall arc of it was they start off by saying, all right, hi, what'd you have for breakfast? Then they were like, tell me what you know about foreign policy, because that's the news right now. Then they transition into like pop news, which is like, what do you think about TikTok? And everybody's like, shut it down. It's China TikTok. And even like Vivek Ramaswamy, who is the Mr. like, don't censor everyone, was like, except when it comes to TikTok, let's start censoring people. And then at the end, when grandma went to sleep and grandpa had passed out in his armchair, then they said they were going to take away their Medicare and Social Security. Then they were saying, oh, you know how we're going to do Part A, Medicare Advantage plans? We're going to do more of those. And as we all know, some of us know, Medicare Advantage is basically not Medicare. It's private insurance instead of the public insurance that is Medicare. It's an expansion of it to offset some of the federal costs. But as we know, in my experience with private health insurance in this country, it makes it more expensive than everybody else. So it was hilarious they waited till Nana went to sleep before saying that she was going to die poor.
You mentioned the pre-debate meals. I actually missed that. I was still doing my setup. I know that this would be putting us out of order. Could we just check in with that before we dive into, and we're going to the incredibly substantive responses or the questions at the very least. What were they saying about their food? Let's take a look at that.
Pre-debate meal.
Enchiladas.
Post-debate meal.
Enchiladas.
Usually has French fries in it.
If I had my choice, I'd have a McDonald's, Big Macs, and French fries, but I typically have salmon and some asparagus.
Pre-debate, you don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart.
And after the debate, are you ravenous? Are you like digging into a burger, or what are you doing after the debate?
We'll let her rip.
If I'm picking the restaurant after the debate, that's bad.
Why?
What is up with these people? Was Ron DeSantis sort of like low-key admitting to like concerns for IBS or something?
He's like, I'm a boob everywhere.
And then just game on, let her rip. What is going on with you after the debate?
Well, he wanted Taco Bell at the beginning and then let it rip after. Which my first problem is, you guys already know this about me. The debate was 2 hours long. You're gonna eat before the debate. 2 hours later, you're gonna go and eat again. I don't know. Maybe I don't eat enough throughout the day. You know, family always tells me I got to eat more than once to twice a day. But damn it, 2 times in 3 hours? I think that's when the bubble guts, and then also DeSantis is letting it rip. Just might happen later. Just my thoughts off the topic, just a little bit.
Dude, I would go to a bar immediately after words. I'd just be like, I can't do this. I mean, I get like whenever I do like a long shoot, I am very hungry afterwards or very tired. So you burn a lot of calories, you're sweating, you're engaged. I know maybe to you guys, it just comes naturally, but I'm hyper focused and I respect the job. But you guys might not. You guys might just like treat it like any other time during the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just don't have the energy to respect the job. Okay, we just got to get through the job. I'm kidding. Anyway,
as John says at midnight Eastern.
Exactly. Okay, so as I suspected, utter nonsense with the food and trying to like make personable some of the most reprehensible troglodytes in our country is a difficult ask. They did their best.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.